time, Mayor Koss asked for us, members of the Kiwanis Club, to meet with the city. And in the process of figuring out what went wrong in 2012, what I found out that was basically we were going bankrupt. Zozobra was going under. And one of the reasons that that was happening was because of, after 9/11, some of the regulations that are put in place on big events that host more than 20,000 actually require us to do things and spend money in ways. So that was where the $20 ticket had come out of. Back in September of 2012, I signaled at that meeting with Mayor Koss, as well as other city officials, that Zozobra could no longer be viable on a Thursday night. Not at a $20 ticket, but we were looking at a $35 to $40 ticket, and that was not with children free. And so basically, it's as if you throw a party in a venue that can hold 40,000, my responsibility as organizer is that I have to host that party for 40,000 people. Now, before 2013, the highest that we had gotten up to was about 20,000 people. So you can see that we're spending money in terms of porta potties and fencing and generators and lights and security personnel in order to anticipate a crowd that the venue can actually hold. So, as you can understand in any business, that's a problem. After having extensive meetings with then Mayor Koss, in November, we came out and said, we'll take this to the public and say, we have to move to a Friday night. And so a lot of news coverage was given back in November of 2012, and finally Mayor Koss said, let's try one more time on Thursday. This is your first year. You guys haven't advertised, you haven't done a lot of those things. And we did. We went in earnest. For the first time, Hutton sponsored almost $15,000 in radio ads. KOAT matched a $10,000 payment that we paid in terms of television commercials, $5,000 in advertising. We actually spoke to publications that we had never done. We did an outreach with some of the places, the Washington Journal, also with the New York Times, trying to get some of that publicity as well. And for our efforts, we got a 30,000 crowd, but we had about 18,000 people who were paying. So then people say, well, that's another problem with your business model, is if you don't have enough folks paying. But really what happened was that we had such an influx of people coming in, and since we decided not to charge for kids 10 and over, we had a problem where people were coming in and saying, my son or my daughter is 10 years old, right? And so our folks, our Kiwanians that actually work the gates, are not going to fight with families as to how old their son or daughter is. And so after giving this the good old college try, we decided that no, we had to go to a Friday. And the first idea was actually to go to Fiesta Friday. But I had listened to both what Mayor Koss had told me, and I listened to what former Police Chief Bryant had told me about the difficulty in transporting the police force from Fort Marcy back down to the plaza. And so the first idea was actually to ask the Fiesta Council to close the plaza at 8 p.m. and then transfer all of the activities up to Fort Marcy. And what the idea was is that we would burn Zozobra, and then the traditional bailet that had taken place after Zozobra would actually take place at Fort Marcy. And after many, many months of discussion with Fiesta Council, the Fiesta Council decided that they did not want to close the plaza. Now I'll tell you that even at 90 years old, compared to the Fiesta Council, we're the new kids on the block with their 300 years. And so we have to give respect and deference to the fact that they did not want to close the plaza on Fiesta Friday. So we were then faced with an idea of what if we had Zozobra, what would happen? And what we felt is that residents would actually want to be able to come back and dance on the plaza. And we did not feel that we were ready for that kind of a Friday night. So what was the impetus in moving to this year to a Friday? Well, first, we had expressed that need back in 2012. And again, we tried in 2013. We have basically 3 years of reserve, just so that the committee understands this. If we have a rain year this year, we have 0 years of reserve. That is the impetus to make sure that we can actually make Zozobra survive. So what we started doing was we held meetings with lots of folks, and we reached out to lots of folks. And I think that one of the success stories is the conversations that we had with the Fort Marcy Neighborhood Association. We found out that our event actually caused problems where people would dig pits out and start fires on their property, that people would go up and mess up the landscaping because they were looking for higher ground. So after those conversations, last year, we actually, at our expense and our volunteers' time, we fenced off that area with an agreement. And so the neighborhood association was very, very happy with the efforts that we made. And we reached out to downtown merchants. Our first downtown merchant meeting was December 4th, 2012. That was the first time that we approached this. And what we said is that we had to look for a way to go back to a Friday. And the funny thing about this is that one of the reasons we decided to take the heat of moving Zozobra to a week prior to Fiesta was because of downtown merchants. We did that so that you did not have this onslaught of people coming down to the plaza, and we heard problems of trash, of people urinating, broken storefronts, all of these things that have happened in the past. We wanted to avoid that. But here's the other thing that happened. After we had those conversations, we also looked at the economic impact of that. And so if I could pass them, Don, if you could pass out. In our economic studies, what we found, to the council members, thank you. What we found out was that occupancy for the weekend we were going to was the lowest of the holiday weekends of any weekend in Santa Fe. These come from the city's own OTAB, right? Because we were concerned with the economic impact. And so what we saw was an opportunity to take that 56.3% occupancy and increase it by working with our alumni associations to bring our expatriates back home for high school reunions. Okay? The other thing that we did was we actually looked at not only what would happen with hotels and Fairwoman, but also what would happen with downtown restaurants. And you have a graph in front of you that shows you that the blue indicates restaurants that close before the event. Green are people who close at about 9 o'clock. Remember that our event will run probably till about 9:45, 10 o'clock. The yellow are people who stay open for the next 60 minutes. And then finally the red are what we would call late night bars that would stay open. Now, I'll give you an example. One of the things that I heard from Councilor Boucher was that the Innabon Sazi was upset because they had a wedding that had been planned for a long time and they're afraid that the street closures won't work. Well, what I would like to say to my partners at the Sazi is that had you talked to me, we would have worked out the same deal that we have for every resident in Fort Marcy, which is we have a website. They go and they list their guests get to print out something. Our security and the police allow those people to go through. We make it work. And what we're trying to say is that we are struggling to survive. This is an amazing, unique cultural event that does wonderful things for our children. I get a stipend that actually doesn't really count because by the time you look at everything we do, but the thousands of volunteers that come together to bring this event. We want this event to work, but we want it to be safe, and we want to be partners. And so I understand that this is going to be difficult for our downtown merchants, but I ask you, please, let's work together. If you know that you have a big event and you're a high-priced restaurant, you have 3 months to understand how you're going to stock your restaurant. On that evening, you serve a different menu that's affordable to locals and visitors alike. And if you're able to make that business model work, you adapt. It's a great thing about capitalism. It's a great thing about our country, is that we adapt. But Madam Chairman, we went above and beyond anything that I would say any other organization has ever done. Last year, we spent almost $7,000 in looking, and 90% of that money was donated to have Accenture come in and look at this from not only a public safety standpoint, but also as an economic standpoint. They gave us tips and pointers, and what we did to make sure that we presented a plan that was both economically as well as public safety minded, we ran a dry run last year, and we think that that went very, very successful. So what we're here today is that we're here to listen. We want to help. We will bend over backwards to address these issues, whether it's booth space at our event, and I threw this out, and some of the downtown restaurants said, well, that's not our type of crowd. What I really think is that this is an opportunity. If you have free space at Zozobra and you offer samples where you sell your food, locals can see that, and maybe they take their wife there for the anniversary, or maybe they go for a birthday. There are many opportunities for all of us to do well. And so we're here to listen. We want to make our event successful, but this is now the survival of our event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sandoval. Questions from the committee? Mr. Roybal.
First off, Mr. Sandoval, that was quite a presentation. We appreciate all the information given us. We appreciate all the work that Kiwanis do in the community, so thank you for that. And of course, Zozobra is a very important tradition, and we applaud you for that, so thank you for all the time and effort. And again, I understand you guys are all volunteers, and nobody's taking anything from this except for the scholarships. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
That applause wasn't for you.
I was hoping. Great, thank you for that presentation, obviously, and it is affirming to hear that there has actually been a great deal of thought and consideration by Kiwanis over the past several years in terms of Zozobra. I know in the initial report in the paper, they were talking about some of the economics, and it looked like you guys were down some 70 to 80,000 in terms of the event this past year. So, having worked with many nonprofits over the years, I know that's significant. So, I appreciate the keen attention to trying to reverse that trend. And you know, it's interesting. I will note, as I have to you personally in the past, that many people describe this past year's Zozobra as the best they'd ever attended. So I thank you for bringing me back to the